God Eternal Oketra versus Akiri Line-Slinger. Yeah, started playing this commander a few weeks ago on the channel. We have a Wrath of God, 3 mana, and an Hour of Revelation. Yeah, I say we keep this. And our opponent starting things off with a Stoneforge Masterwork. +1/+1 for each other creature you control that shares a type with it. I imagine that is just going to be +1/+1 in an Akiri deck. We'll just get down our tap land and pass straight over. Akiri Line-Slinger is 2 mana in Boros, a 0/3 with First Strike and Vigilance, but it gets +1 to its power per artifact our opponent controls. So very much an artifact equipment Voltron deck usually. And God Eternal Oketra is 5 mana for a double strike zombie god, mono white 3/6. Whenever you cast a creature you get a 4/4 vigilant zombie. Alright, more mana for us. We're just going to limp our way up to a Wrath of God, it looks like. And I don't actually mind our opponent getting a boatload of equipment and ramp into play, because the sooner they get into a lot of non-land permanents, the sooner this thing only costs 3, and it destroys all non-land permanents. And there's Uriok Steel Shaper. Equip costs cost a generic less, and as long as it is equipped, each creature you control that's a soldier or knight gets +1/+1. And Akiri is a core soldier. So Akiri on turn 3 coming straight in for 4 points of commander damage. We're going to have to take another hit from that next turn, just more mana for us. If we make it into the late game, I'm sure we'll be glad of it, but we need to slow our opponent right down, and hopefully a Wrath of God will be good enough to do that. They've only got 3 cards left in hand. And the game plan may be to wipe the board, slow our opponent down, and then over the next turn or two get towards an Elspeth Sun's Champion and get a lot of chump blockers in the way. And as long as they don't get into trample or flying with their equipments, then we should be fairly safe with that. Alright, but we're jumping all the way up to 14 points of commander damage here because Akiri is a 5/4 with double strike thanks to the Fire Shrieker. So that's 14 points already. They've only got 2 cards left in hand at least. But we have to wipe the board here, we have no other choice. Oh, and they have a Boros Charm. That is quite the hand our opponent has. So, looks like that's us done for. We've been way too slow this game. And that's how the game wants to be played out by Akiri, as fast as possible. Let's give our opponent the opportunity to just swing in. We are tapped out. They shouldn't be playing any more spells. They should just swing in. Okay, we'll just let them get down the Shuko and swing in. And there we go. They take us up to 21 points of commander damage, and that is that. Another fast one from Akiri Line-Slinger. Might have to whip this deck out again because it is a really good fast-paced deck for 1 versus 1. Let's get another game going. The rematch. God Eternal Oketra versus Akiri Line-Slinger. Now a disenchant might be helpful, although we do have a couple of tap lands which is really slow. And we don't want to be slow against Akiri. Yeah, we'll keep that. I quite like that disenchant. Just have to hope that our opponent doesn't get into a bunch of equipments. Although that might be asking too much against Akiri Line-Slinger. Okay, that's more removal with a Council's Judgment. So we may be able to take control of this game for just long enough to be able to get some stuff underway. Anointed Procession. I think I'd just like to go for the Pearl Medallion here because then we'll have a bunch of stuff to do next turn, especially if we get into a Plains. Worst case scenario, we just get down a tap land and play some stuff for a single white mana. Luckily for us, our opponent is struggling on red. They've gotten down a Glass of the Guild Pact, which is an Anthem effect for multicoloured creatures. And now a Sword of Light and Shadow, so they're going to have pro-white. That's definitely something for us to play around. I say we just get down the Anointed Procession here, because it is an expensive spell to play, but once we've gotten it out of the way, it can do a lot of work for us. And it's almost fingers crossed for another Plains next turn, because then we can get into our God Eternal Oketra, although we don't have any means of generating zombies with her, because we don't have any creatures. And there's Akiri, and they can equip the Sword of Light and Shadow as well. That is pro white and pro black, +2/+2. When you hit your opponent, you get 3 life, and you can put a creature from graveyard to hand. So in that case, I think it's just Hideaway on the Windbrisk Heights. Coercive Portal will have to go under that. The rest in any order. And then it's Disenchant on the Sword of Light and Shadow. And Council's Judgment for just 2 mana, because we want to slow down Akiri very much. They can recast her next turn for 4 mana, but the longer we can keep commander damage off of us, the better. This is already a much slower game than last time. And we are definitely getting into our God Eternal Oketra, I think. If we can keep her around, then that'll be really good, because we do have creatures now. And if we can make it to next turn, we can actually protect her with a Stonecloaker. So yeah, I think if we make it through to the next turn, then we're looking pretty good. The Anointed Procession will give us 2 zombies per creature we cast, so if God Eternal Oketra's ability wasn't good enough, getting 8 power just for casting a creature is even better, I think. Okay, Grafted Wargear is +3/+2, but whenever it becomes unattached, it destroys the creature that it was attached to. So Akiri jumps all the way up to a 6/6 with First Strike and Vigilance, so they will be able to trade blows with each other, and an Etched Champion gets pro all colours with Metalcraft, which our opponent does have now. So that just makes a really good blocker for our opponent. Only 2 more direct hits we can take like that from Akiri before we go down to commander damage, but I think we might have slowed the game down enough. Alright, we have Stonecloaker and Aven Mind Sensor. Now Stonecloaker could just return the God Eternal back to our hand to protect it, but it could also return Aven Mind Sensor back, which means more zombies, so we have to decide what we want to do there. I think we just pass the turn, and then if our opponent decides to swing in, then we can go for a bunch of blocks with the Anointed Procession zombies. We should be able to get 4 zombies into play this turn, which should be enough to gang up on Akiri and kill her off. Now they have enough mana to recast Akiri, but it's still going to make it difficult for them, and it's still going to slow them down. They've only got 1 card left in hand now. A Veteran Swordsmith comes down. Other soldiers you control get +1/+0. And in comes Akiri again, and this time coming in with the Etched Champion. Oh, and I click through to the blocking phase. That is really bad. Oh, should have responded with attacks there. Oh well. We'll go for the Aven Mind Sensor. We could have blocked Akiri here, and that was the plan, but I just clicked the pass button by accident there without thinking about it. Okay, there's Swords to Plowshares, so I'm glad I went for the Aven Mind Sensor first. We'll go for Stonecloaker, and we still get a bunch of zombies, so that was the last card in our opponent's hand. In comes the Stonecloaker, and we will exile the sword from our opponent's graveyard. Then Stonecloaker bounces the God Eternal Oketra back to our hand in response to the swords. Now, blockers have been declared because I clicked through too quickly, so we are, we're going to be keeping our fingers crossed that Akiri doesn't get more evasion. Alright, but there's a plains. So do we want to go for Honor of the Pure? Well, we can actually go for Oketra and Intangible Virtue there, and that will give our zombies a bunch of buffs. And then if we get into a land again next turn, we can go for Duplicant onto the Akiri. Yeah, we'll just get down the God Eternal Oketra again. And then Intangible Virtue, that gives tokens +1/+1 and Vigilance. Yeah, our opponent acknowledging there that the Boros Charm last game was really good. But it was more than the Boros Charm that our opponent won with. They had a really good hand and lots of cheap equipment to get out, so the Akiri became really big really quickly, which is exactly how you're supposed to run it in 1 versus 1 specifically. So just swinging in the air with a 3-2 and a 2-1. Now, we're not out of the woods yet, but I would like to get into another land next turn so that we can duplicate that Akiri. Or even better, getting rid of the grafted war gear so that our opponent would have to get rid of Akiri, and that would be a nice 2-for-1 for us. They have to just keep their fingers crossed and go for a board wipe. They won't be able to search for very much because of the Aven Mind Sensor. If an opponent would search your library, they search the top 4 instead. So that really hampers their ability to go for things like Stoneforge Mystic. And an Uriok Steel Shaper showing up again. That makes equip costs cost less, but that's of no relevance when they only have 1 equipment in play. Now, we're still not out of the woods, like I say, because these zombie warriors, one will get chumped to the Etched Champion, and then one would die to Akiri. They do have Vigilance, so it might be worth just swinging in anyway, because we'll either deal a lot of damage to our opponent with the other 2 that go wide, or they'll be forced to chump with one of their other, or 2 of their other white creatures. So I think it is time to start swinging in with those zombie warriors. And if we get into another mana, we can go for Duplicant, and that will get us another couple of zombies. And our opponent going into the red zone with the Etched Champion. They have 4 turns to kill us off with that thing. That does have protection from all colours thanks to Metalcraft. If we can remove an artifact from play, then that will remove Metalcraft from it. And they won't be able to swing straight through like that anymore. Alright, a Scroll Rack I don't particularly care for, so I think we go for Windbrisk Heights to get this Coercive Portal into play. Oh, and I completely misremembered what this did. I'm thinking of the green hideaway land that cares about the power on board. And this cares about how many creatures you swing in within a turn. Okay. In that case, we just go for Honor of the Pure. And we'll just hold up mana, make our opponent think we might have a swords or something. And we don't want our opponent to get any ideas about going wide on us, so we'll just... well, we are on a bit of a race, aren't we? So let's go in with the Stonecloaker as well. But we'll hold back the Aven Mind Sensor. One of the zombies will be blocked by Akiri. Well, there's 19 points of damage coming through here, so that encourages our opponent to chump with a couple of white creatures. But they opt not to do that, so we lose a zombie and take our opponent down to 6. We'll see if our opponent gets into anything here. Okay, there's another equipment. Oh, and that's Trample. Yeah, I don't think it's going to be enough, but that's +2/+2 and Trample. So we're going to have to gang up on Akiri with zombies, I think. And even then it won't be enough to take her down, but we do have some creatures in the air. So yeah, I think we've got our opponent here. Equipping up Akiri with Tenza, and that bumps her up to a 12/9 with Trample, Vigilance and First Strike. And our opponent is just committing everything into the red zone. They might have gotten enough of a buff onto Akiri to get lethal through on us here. If we block like that, we'll take 5. And that won't be lethal. That won't be commander damage. Yeah, so that's 20 commander damage. And then we block there. And there. And then it's just 3 points from the etched champion. Yeah, I think that's right. So we'll just leave the blocks like that. Yeah, so that knocks us down to 1. And 20 points of commander damage. So all we do here is untap first of all. And then swing in at our opponent. And yeah, our opponent sees that, so they decide to call it a day. Just goes to show how good Akiri Line-Slinger is. That was a much slower game for Akiri, but they can definitely pile in damage when they want to. But we managed to slow them down quite a bit by removing an artifact and Akiri herself. And we just managed to get into our Anthem effects, and the Anointed Procession really kept us in that game by giving us twice as many zombies. We wouldn't have had that anywhere near as close if I hadn't have accidentally passed through the attack step. It would have been a bit more of a convincing game there, but we managed to pull out the win anyway with God Eternal Oketra, and this time up against Akiri Line-Slinger. Hopefully you all enjoyed that. I'm tribalkai on the EDH channel. Thank you for watching.